Hi everyone, so we're back for part two called Flipping Our Lid. Yesterday we talked about parts and functions of the brain. So we talked about our prefrontal cortex, our amygdala, and our hippocampus. Our prefrontal cortex, as a reminder, it's our thinking part of our brain. Our amygdala keeps us safe, and our hippocampus stores all our memories. So now we're going to talk about flipping our lid. We're going to go over a hand model of the brain, talk about emotional arousal, and then also the things that we can't do when our lid is flipped. So as we talked about yesterday, our emotion part of the brain, amygdala, fires when there is real threat or perceived threat. So usually the amygdala isn't sure. It can't tell what is a real threat or just a perceived threat. So when they do see that as a threat, our brain responds in one of three ways. It fight, flights, or it freezes. This is a good thing at times because it keeps us safe when it's real danger. So if your hand just touched a hot pan and you move it away really quickly, that's your amygdala telling you that you're in danger. Or if a ball or a basketball is coming towards you when you're watching the game and you have to move out of the way really quickly so you don't get it in your face, that again is your amygdala reacting very fast, tell you what to do. Now, the response is problematic when it is not a real threat or it's a false alarm. So sometimes when we feel big emotions, such as being upset, worried, mad, uncomfortable, but we are technically safe, we and children may just flip our lid because our emotion brain or amygdala and our logic brain and our prefrontal cortex are just not communicating effectively. So essentially, your amygdala thinks it's a real threat and tells your prefrontal cortex that. When this happens, your amygdala or guard dog is in control and you flipped your lid. So this is an example, again, or another way to think about it. When our guard dog or our amygdala senses danger, it's going to bark. When our eagle or our prefrontal cortex hears a barking dog, it's going to react. It's either going to run away or it's going to fight. And our elephant or our memory saver cannot hear or do its job. So for example, you're trying to leave for school but can't find your backpack, you start to get stressed about being late, you get more and more upset as you can't find it. Your amygdala starts to bark because you're very upset. You start shouting at your brother and stomping around looking for your backpack. That's your eagle reacting. That's your prefrontal cortex being like, I need to do something. And they react as if they're in danger. And then your elephant is not going to be able to remember where you left your backpack because there's so much going on between the dog barking and your prefrontal cortex reacting. The elephant cannot do its job. So this is our hand model of the brain. If you want to follow along while I explain it, that's up to you. But I'll just show you. So if we put our hand up like this, at the base of your brain, represented here, this is your brainstem. This is essentially responsible for all those basic things like breathing and keeping your heart pumping. And then your thumb, if you fold it in, it sits in the middle. So it's just like your amygdala in the brain. Again, your hippocampus would be right beside your amygdala. This is your amygdala, and it's responsible for sensing danger and telling your brain and body that you are in danger. So your fingers, like your prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain, helps us manage emotions and make complex decisions. Those fold over. So that's your eagle, watching over. So when fear, danger, or intense emotion overwhelm your amygdala, our prefrontal cortex goes offline and we flip our lid. So essentially, your amygdala starts firing, it starts pushing, and you've eventually flipped your lid when you're very upset. And when your brain is overwhelmed like this, it can't make those important decisions properly. So that might be when, if you've ever been in a situation where you're just overly upset and you just can't make rational decisions, that would be you flipped your lid. So it's just another way of looking at it. Again, you're calm and settled. Your emotions start rising, elevated emotions, emotionally flooded, flipped your lid, lost it. And then to bring it back down, you're going to settle those emotions, elevated, but you're calming down and you're back to calm and settled. So if we talk about what happens between emotion settling and calm settled, or right here, we're going to talk about those in future webinars when we talk about co-regulation and emotion regulation. So these are some of the things that it's difficult to do when you have flipped your lid. So like I said, you can't access that reasoning part of your brain. Um, your amygdala is firing, it's getting in the way too much. You just can't. You can't think critically about the consequences of your actions. So a child isn't going to, when they're in this state and they throw a chair, there's nothing going through their brain saying, if I throw this chair, I might hurt someone or I might get in trouble. They're throwing the chair because they're emotionally flooded. And you can't regulate their body when when they flip their lid. They can't attune to others, so they can't make a map of the other person's experience. They can't tell that someone else is upset. They can't demonstrate response flexibility. So what that means is they can't put a space between their impulse and their action. So they're just going to act like that because they can't make that space. And they can't calm fear at that point. So for example, a child has flipped their lid, they've thrown their glasses across the room, they're screaming, crying, kicking. The teacher's trying to reason with them about how expensive his glasses are and how much his dad paid for them or anything like that. It's just not the time for those type of discussions because that child's lid is flipped. So we'll talk about that in further webinars about what you can do and what is helpful in those situations. So next time we will be talking about 3 responses a child may show when they have flipped their lid, such as fight, flight, or freeze. Thank you.